Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and CPS issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and today I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Claudia Ovalles. She is a Marine mom. She is also a child advocate right out of Texas, and she's helping with legislation pushing bills through. And she's trying to bring awareness to parental alienation and all these House bills. And we've got a lot to discuss here with this Marine mom, Claudia. She's a champion. So, hello.
Hi there. Thank you so much.
Glad to have you on.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
So, do you want to give us a little background about you?
Well, I reside in Texas. This is my home state. I've lived in two locations. One is California, where I was stationed, and then the other was Florida. We were stationed there, but I was a military spouse, and that was about a year ago. We were there for a few years, and we just moved back to Texas. So now I'm back home, and this is where I legislate. This is where my litigation occurred. So that's why I'm so involved here back in the state of Texas.
Mm-hmm. So now, how did you get involved with helping the legislation? How did you connect with people to get into this?
Well, like many parents, we get denied access to our children.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to go through litigation to get an enforcement or to get the other party to comply. And what I was facing was a lot of denials. And so I actually got a friend, a high school friend, that told me there was another parent that was pursuing the same thing. And I got in touch with him. He had a Facebook page, and it's called Texas 25.03, Interference with Child Custody. I reached out to him. This was in 2018, not knowing that we went to the same high school as well. He's just a few years behind. But so what he encouraged me to do was to meet him at a town hall that was being presented by Senator Jose Menendez. And basically this parent had looked into a lot of the penal code, which is Texas Penal Code 25.03, Interference with Child Custody, and educated me on that this is a state jail felony. So when officers that you want to report this denial of access or denial of visitation tell you that it's a civil matter, it is not. And it was hard for me to believe because, why is it they tell us this so much? So I attended the event, and it was really eye-opening for me meeting this other dad advocate and hearing about the law, but also getting involved with the legislation. So he kind of guided me how to get more involved, how to be a little bit more active, and I did throughout my litigation of 2.5 years. So from 2018 up until now, we worked with our legislators in presenting multiple parents coming forward, having the same issue, presenting our stories, the outcomes, the constant denial of access, our children being impacted by this. And so we work well with our legislator in helping him actually draft the bill and then presenting it to him. And that's the bill that we're legislating now, which is Senate Bill 2011. Again, it's on interference with child custody. And it kind of clarifies a lot of the gray area when officers or law enforcement go to a scene and they see a parent there trying to exercise their court-ordered visitation, and they have another parent that is denying them of that, and how to clarify that this person is in fact committing a state jail felony by denying the access. Whether it's whether it's presented as a child doesn't want to go, or they're not there, it allows the parent that has visitation that opportunity to get this filed, which is an offense report, and get it documented. So that's one bill that we're working on, but we also have a companion bill in the House, which is House Bill 4240, and that was worked on by the city of Laredo and some parents that were also a part of Team 2503. And that legislator is actually adding a citation to the penal code. So in fact, if an officer goes to the scene and a parent is being denied, that officer can actually cite that parent that's denying that access a ticket. So and the idea is to minimize the retainment, is to minimize the withholding of the child, because it's the children that are actually suffering more because they don't get to have that relationship with that other parent and they're being denied. So we're trying to minimize that. I personally feel that when you retain the child, that's where it actually leads to the alienation, because the child's going to feel that they're not wanted, that the other parent doesn't want to see them. A lot of the bad mouthing, bashing of that parent comes into play, and we want to minimize that. So that's kind of how I got started in this, and I've just been pushing it along the way. Like I said, I've been here back in Texas for a year, so I was waiting to get back because I wanted to be here, kind of boots on the ground doing stuff. I go to a lot of events. We meet with our sheriff. I will go meet with other parents to help them. I'll go to the Capitol and testify. I just testified on HB 803, the Equal Shared Parenting Bill. 150 parents showed up there. We had Eric Carroll show up. We had just parents from all over Texas. And there are parents that support different bills, like the Equal Shared Parenting. There are parents that support child abuse legislation. There are parents that support interference with child custody. And a lot of these groups are driven by just parents that are frustrated that they can't have access to their children. So we kind of put all of us together, and it was such an amazing crowd because we all testified, 150 testimonies. I think I got there about 7. I got home about 10 that day, but they kept going every day, because if you sign up, they are going to hear you. So we were just ready. I made little stickers that said support equal shared parenting, the bill number, everybody wore them. So you could tell who was representing and supporting this bill. So again, I just get more involved. And it's actually very empowering that you're doing something to get the movement going.
Mm-hmm.
I know oftentimes that we go through this and we're in different stages of litigation. We're we don't know. There's so many unknowns on how this happens. What's the process like? We're stressed financially, mentally, emotionally. This impacts your work, your family life, everything, and you're really drained. But to me, I'm more driven by making the change, and some people can do it. Some are still kind of, how would you say, recovering from a lot of the litigation. But I feel that this is what I can do to try to fix this, because I see a lot of parents starting off when their child is 2, 3 years old. And if this isn't fixed, they have those years of going through this, of denial of access, of the parent-child relationship being affected. So we want to minimize that. I don't want another parent going through what I went through. So that's kind of what's encouraged me to be more out there, to speak up and to bring more awareness and get involved. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Well, I think that's great. And do you think Texas will be the leader of all of these bills, happening in other states?
Well, for the equal shared parenting bill, possibly. I mean, there are some equal shared parenting states out there already. Kentucky's one of them. I think Missouri's very close. I think Arizona as well. So we're really trying for that bill. I'm not sure if it'll get passed. We get a lot of pushback because, when you get equal shared parenting, it does help the parents and the family, but we get a lot of pushback from the lobbyists that don't want these bills passed, because then it would take away that money that goes through the family court system. They want that conflict. They want you to come back and fight for your child. And if you have an equal shared parenting platform, that takes away from, their pocketbook. And but equal shared parenting for the HB 803, it's for fit, able, and willing parents. I know there's going to be a lot of concerns like, well, it's not for everyone. Well, fit, able, and willing parents. So it's just a new starting point. And the other bills, the child abuse bill, which is House Bill 2153, it is the close, in my opinion, and others might see it the same or different. It's the closest language to parental alienation because it discusses, let me see if I can bring it up. It discusses the child's refusal to basically want to interact with the other parent. It's not something that a child normally does. Is they just want to completely not want to visit you, and it's just very strange behavior. So that actually points that out, and that's one of the bills that we're pushing. Not sure if it'll get. It still hasn't been heard, but it has a lot of support. Victim to Heroes is really helping us with that bill, and so let me read it really quick. It's relating to the definition of abuse of a child. It is, let me see if I can possibly read what the, so it recognizes that engaging in conduct that results in a child's reluctance or refusal without legitimate justification to have a relationship with one of the child's parents is a form of child abuse. So that's what it would be, that would be added. So that's a huge one. However, if we don't get a hearing, and we're getting very close to the end of the session, we might run out of time. We're just going to be ready for the next session and have a lot of support for that one. So the two bills that are in the House and the Senate right now are HB 4240 and SB 2011. Those are the ones that have a lot of momentum, and those are the bills that we've supported for the last 3 years. So we're super excited about them.
Now, how long do you have to wait to come back for, to approach it again?
Okay, so every state's legislative session varies. For Texas, it's every 2 years. So whatever we can't do now, we will have to be prepared for 2023. A lot of the bills are worked on as soon as this legislative session ends, because you want a bill that has a lot of support. You want to make sure that you have your legislators that would either author it or co-sponsor it. So we're already looking at that. If, for instance, once these bills get passed, and of course we're so close, and we're hoping that they are, is this child abuse bill. That's going to be my next project, is to make sure that that does happen. And because this is the first bill I've ever been involved with, I'm just learning so much. So I'm ready to, I've understood how to get this moving, and how to use your legislators, how to meet with them, talk to them, and just getting on board for the next and prepared for the next legislative session, and getting involved early, because the earlier you have all your requests in line, then it's a lot smoother when the legislative session opens. And it opened in January. So from January to May, they're trying to hear 7,000 bills and decide what's going to get voted on and what's pushed through. So you have that time frame. I've never followed legislation so much in my life, but things change and things can move pretty fast. But the better you're prepared, the better the outcome, I think. So yeah, it's every 2 years. I know California, it's every year. Every state, it just varies.
It's a shame that in Texas it's 2 years, though. I mean, 2 years is a long time. At least to me it is.
Yeah. It is. And so if you want to get like a more research involved to help push and support the bill, you can try to do that. So I'm just learning a little bit at a time. I support my legislators. I attend events. And I want to, because we're the constituents. They're elected. We voted for them, so they work for us. So we bring our concerns to them. However, when only one parent brings a concern, it's just one parent. It's only one story. But if you band together and you have the similar stories, well, they're likely going to listen more, because then there might be more parents that are having this issue. And so that's how we've addressed it. We make sure that we're in attendance. I mean, some of these town halls are now via Zoom, and we just attend and we just spread, hey, there's going to be a Zoom call at 6, or there's going to be a 5:30, get on and support your legislators, thank them, stuff like that. So they're familiar with who you are, and that helps a lot.
A lot of people don't realize all this is going on. until it happens to them.
Right.
And like with you and with me, advocacy didn't, we didn't choose this. Advocacy chose us.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I never thought I was going to do this. And my husband asks me all the time, what are you going to do next? Because you're really into this. And I either want it to be lobbyists to try to help learn how to lobby these bills to get them moving, or go to law school and help a lot of the understanding of how this works. Because um, I think when you know a little bit more, it's a little bit easier instead of you having to go figure it out. But it's something that I mean, I'm just really passionate about. And with these two bills passing, I was just talking to the other parent that put this group together, like, what's next? What do we do next? And my thing is going to be behind this child abuse bill. So that's my focus on, and just staying in touch with the legislators that we've met, that we know are behind these bills. Now, one of the biggest thing is that I tell parents is that you need to find legislators that have certain agenda items, or they have certain interests. So if you know a legislator, first is identifying your legislator, finding out what district you're in and who's your representative, and then what are their interests. There are representatives that support like child welfare. There's legislators that support family issues. There's legislators that support education. You know. Veterans, things like that. So you find the one that is looking for that, and you ask to meet with them, and then you meet with your own rep, and you see if you could both work, all three of you work together, because there's just so much change, and these laws can be implemented if you've met with your legislators. So that's a suggestion, is get more involved, because I've never followed this before ever, and I'm just learning. Sorry, that's my dog.
That's okay.
And so it's just a learning process, but I really recommend getting involved. You hear a lot of parents that go through this and they don't know what to do. And I didn't either. I didn't think I was going to be, nobody wants to be at this point of advocating, but it's just something that needs to happen to stop a lot of this. And the issue that I've experienced personally is the alienation. And if we can correct these bills and minimize that, then I'm happy that I contribute in that way.
Most definitely. It's hard with, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of parents about being alienated, and, you know, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, and I'm sure you can't either. You can't remember how many people you've talked to, because there's so many,
Mhm.
you know.
You do, and you hear a lot of stories, and they all vary, but the behaviors and the actions are the same. The
Mhm,
tactics that are used. So if there's a way that we can get legislators to listen and make changes to minimize that, I'm all for it.
mhm,
Just let's work together. And it's not about a mom issue or a dad issue. The person that's most impact is the child. So that's more of what I'm doing. It's no longer about my children. It's about just fixing it, and helping others along the way.
mhm. Now, you've probably seen the film Erasing Family,
Mhm.
and, that's just a heartbreaking film, and I think everyone needs to see it.
Yeah.
Even people that are in intact families need to see it, because I'm sure they know somebody who has gone through this, and, I would like to see that be in all the schools.
Oh,
I think it's
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's going into some of the schools, but it'd be great if it was throughout the whole nation and globally, if we could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you said, a lot of times we don't do anything until it happens to us.
Mhm,
And then there are a lot of families that are intact, and they are I guess normal range family. Their family dynamic is good, but there are so many of us that this has happened to, that it may not happen to a specific person, but they, like you said, they may know someone that went through this and they just didn't know what to do. They gave up. They didn't know where to turn to. Um, but yeah, the documentary was very well done. It is an eye opener because you see from different perspectives, and you see from the adult child. what they went through. So yeah, it's a great documentary. I recommend it for everyone.
Mhm. Yes, and it's gotta be shown in the schools because if these kids watch it, they may have a friend who is going through some difficult things, and maybe they could, I don't know, get them some help, direct them in some way.
Or you question that, what's happening in my family, that's not normal. uh,
Mhm,
I want to talk to somebody about this, or reach out to, maybe it's a friend, and they've gone through it or something. But yeah, I agree, there needs to be more awareness, because um, I also support Children's Bill of Rights. Kids need to be made aware that some of the things that are happening are not normal things. The bad mouthing, the bashing of the other parent. Kids shouldn't be hearing that stuff, and so they need to realize you have rights, that you shouldn't be hearing this stuff, because
mm,
it's not good for you. It's not healthy for you. Um, and so that's another thing on a different level, on the federal level, I'm trying to help um, push as well.
mhm. So, like, where does that stand right now, the Children's Bill of Rights?
Well, it's getting, again, when you're pushing legislation, it's good to understand the different levels.
Mhm,
So here in Texas, I became familiar with, my House rep, my state senator, my U.S. senator, the Texas U.S. senators, and then what their interests are and how to get in touch with them, how to request meetings. California tried a Children's Bill of Rights in 2015, so I got some of that language, then understand why didn't that get pushed, and then how to minimize, because if you have simple things, they're easier to legislate. If you have it with a lot of language, and you're trying to add on laws and things, it just makes it really difficult. So
mm,
we're just trying to put a bullet list of maybe 10 items on the Children's Bill of Rights, that's easier to do. So it's just, again, I just reach out to my legislators. I request a meeting. I've spoken to them before, and I've followed up with them recently. So I'm just waiting for a follow up, especially with these bills that we're working on, so they can see this is what um, has been identified as a problem, and this is what the state of Texas is doing. So now on a federal level, how can we get involved to get something, across all 50 states? So it's just learning a little bit at a time, getting parents to get on the same call, and express, what we're all doing, and get them on board.
mhm. I found talking to parents that have never gone through family court or any of this alienation stuff, it's almost like when you talk to them, they start getting wound up and they don't wanna talk about it anymore. I don't know if you run into that, but it's like, yeah.
I I do. I get parents that like do. I mean, like, even. I mean, honestly, my husband, he's like, "Are we going to talk about this all the time?" And
Mhm,
I said, "Well, this is because this is my I guess passion right now. There's always things changing. There's always updates, like with legislation. So that'll be our discussion. So I have to kind of pick the right time and place to share all that stuff. So then, of course, so it doesn't just take over your life, because a lot of the civil litigation, that just takes over. So
mhm,
now that when you're moving around, you want to set those timelines so that you're still living your life, you're still taking care of yourself, and then you're advocating as well. So there are those parents, though, that they just don't want to talk about it. It's a sensitive subject, but we're just spreading awareness, because this is real. The alienation is real. It's not going to go away,
mm,
and unless we and until we fix it, we need to spread awareness. People need to know that this does exist,
mhm,
uh, and so I share it with other people. My family is very supportive. Um, Luckily, I was the only one that's ever gone through this. My siblings, whether they stayed with their spouse or they divorced, they don't have any of these issues. So when you present this, it sounds so crazy.
mhm, mhm,
You have other people that look at you like, well, what did you do to deserve this? And like, no, no, we didn't do anything to deserve this. It's just this person is a high conflict person who wants to hurt you, and they're using the children to do that, and not realizing that they're hurting the children at the same time. And so, they just they're just in awe, because it sounds crazy.
Mhm.
but it is real. And I've a little bit at a time, I've started opening it up about my story and my situation. And I think a lot of my friends know, because I do a lot of this advocating and legislating, that I'm trying to make a change. So, again, that's just what I do. But I have, luckily for me, I have a lot of support from my spouse, my family, my friends, um, things like that. I know
Mhm.
it's not that way for a lot of people, but luckily I have that.
And it's good you have that. And, like, what do you do for your downtime after, I'm sure when you get back from these things, this legislation, and you're talking before people, you get home, how do you unwind from all of this?
I have my spouse. We do a lot of things together, and then I have my dogs. I have like I have a Mastiff, and he's a puppy. So he's not a small dog, but he's still a puppy. So he's very cuddly and things like that. So I do that, and um, we just have our downtime, which is just relaxing,
Mhm.
taking it easy, spending time together. That's kind of what I do. Um, and I also became a big brother, big sister. I wanted to mentor, so I signed up for the program. So I also do that as well.
Yeah, I've thought of doing that too. You know? Um, is that easy to get into or
It just you just sign up, and then you start taking some required courses. You go in for some training and things like that, and then ever so often they want little updates, and they want you to attend some meetings so that you can understand how to engage and kind of mentor the child. So
Mhm,
I'm still at the beginning. I got assigned a child in December.
mhm,
So we kind of meet, and then we kind of do Zoom calls and things like that. So it's pretty interesting though.
mhm,
I enjoy. I just like I'm volunteering, so
mhm,
it keeps me busy. Um, and if people choose to do it, that's great. And if not, it's self-care, doing things for you.
mhm. Yeah, 'cause there's so much, pressure and stress. You want these bills passed, and you want I don't know if you're like me, but I want everything done right now. And it's just like you're trying to balance and stay busy while you don't, think of these things
Mhm.
and focus on something less stressful.
Yeah. And if I'm not following it, another advocate's following it. We stay in communication all the time. We'll announce it on our Facebook page. We'll help other parents in the meantime. We'll suggest that we stay on top of supporting our legislators. You got to make those calls. You got to send that email. They need to hear from us that you're asking for a hearing on this bill, that you support the bill, and that you're asking that they help support the bill. Just things like that. How to reach out to them in a positive way, because a lot of times parents can try or not try. Parents will contact them with their frustrations that
Mhm,
I'm not seeing my child. Well, during legislation, it's got to be a certain way because we want their support. So
mhm,
we want that message to be positive. So we're just constantly doing that, setting up little updates, things like that.
mhm. So when a person writes in, they should not go over their whole case. They should just maybe give little bits and pieces of it, and keep the
Yes.
letter kinda short, not 4 pages long.
Right, and it's just simply like, I've experienced this. It's having trouble seeing my child. I really support this bill. I would
Mhm,
appreciate if you would support this bill as well. I'm willing to testify on this bill. Just things like that. Thank you so much for your time and service. And then that's it. So something really brief but positive. Um, and that's just something that we learn, because a lot of times we just want these legislators to hear our stories, but you know we have to kind of make the message positive, as much as we want to share what we experienced. Um, but when you meet your legislators and you want a bill passed, that's when it's the better time to share your story, because then they're hearing what parents are going through. But during the legislation, we want it something brief and positive,
mhm,
because they're getting tons of emails, tons of calls, and when they get them, they're noticing that, you know what, we're hearing from our constituents. But again, it has to be a positive message.
Mhm. Yeah, they have to be, I don't know, just constantly, yeah, you have to maybe constantly be in their face so they don't forget it and
Yes,
forget the parents or and more importantly, the children as well.
correct. Absolutely, yes.
Have you run into any legislators that just didn't wanna be bothered?
Um, we've come, no, during this legislative time, they're actually pretty open. It's just that there are so many committees, so that if we go to the Capitol and try to meet them and get their support in person, sometimes their doors are closed because they're in a session, or they're just out. I mean, there's so much going on during the legislative session that, like, our legislator in San Antonio is not here during the session. He's in Austin. So if
Mhm,
we want to meet with him, it's either got to be a Zoom call or we have to drive to Austin. His whole staff is in Austin. So I think that when you go to the Capitol, they see your face, and it's a lot better as far
mhm,
as communicating your concerns and asking for their support versus in an email. So we have parents that continually do that. They'll take a day off and they'll go spend the whole day at the Capitol trying to go and get as much support as they can.
mhm,
But I haven't come across any that were just not approachable or didn't want to help.
mhm.
Um, but we just try to work together with them and share our concerns and continuously ask for their support.
Now, do you encourage parents to take pictures of their kids to hold up and show them?
Well, some people, like for some parents for the testimony for the equal shared parenting, they had a picture of their child
Mhm,
in a frame, and they presented that. They wanted the committee to see, this is my child. Um, some parents didn't, and so it just depends.
mhm,
Um, but just sharing your story at even in when you give a testimony, it's either 2 or 3 minutes, so it has to be
mm,
very limited, that you can talk briefly about your story and then the outcome, and then that you want the support or why you think the bill's so important. um, and when you ask for the support, it's very important that you understand the bill, that you've read the bill,
mhm,
so that you can refer to it. And so that's something else, is that just you need to know what you're legislating for, because you don't want to go up there and then you're not citing it correctly, or um, you haven't read it. So you really want to take a note of that.
mhm. Now, it seems like accountability is a big issue with, getting these judges to, follow through with their orders, and
Mhm.
their when they order someone's in contempt, they just don't follow through.
Right. That happens quite a bit, even though there are these laws. I mean, why do we have an order and why do we have laws if we're just going to allow everyone not to follow them or comply? And then there's no accountability, especially if you're having to take this person back to court and it's costing you attorney's fees. Why is there no accountability? It's a lot of a slap on the wrist, don't do it again, things like that. And it's very frustrating because you're doing your best to comply and follow the order, and the other parent is not, and then these judges, they just don't do anything. So it's very frustrating. And so that's another reason why we want these laws changed, because it's more clear and it's the law. And with these with our legislative session, when it ends in May, everything takes effect September 1st. So
Mm,
that's what we're waiting for. Yeah, because that's a major problem, is just the
mm,
judges and the accountability.
mhm. It is. So you're waiting for House Bill 2011 and 4240 to be
Right.
pushed through.
And 2011 is a Senate bill, that's the SB. And then House Bill 4240, that's the House bill.
Oh,
And and the way that it works is that the Senate bill starts in the Senate, and eventually it'll go through the House, and the House bill will eventually go through the Senate. So they kind of cross paths, and it's at some point they're going to get a different number because they're
mhm,
going to go through a different I guess chamber. So we just still don't know what those numbers are, but for right now, those are the two bill numbers.
Mhm. Now, I heard Dr. Petra Dieter talk about House Bill 2153,
Yes.
and so, I don't know when that will, I don't know, come
That
to
one,
pass.
that one is likely not going to make it because we're so short on the legislative session that we have found that some of these legislators, they pass bills, and because they have so many, they oftentimes forget what they authored. And
Mm,
sadly, that motivation to get the bill through, it kind of just starts to decrease. And so you need to stay on top of them. And we didn't discover this bill until maybe February or March, and then trying to get a lot of the um, the support. Petra helped with the one pager, and got a lot of the organization support to show that this is a huge bill, and this should be heard. That it's trying to work with the author, and then for his office to ask the committee to bring it to be heard. And that there's just a lot of pieces to it, and time is not really on our side when we find this out in the middle of legislative session. So I think we only have about 3 weeks left, and this bill has not been heard. One of the
mm,
things that we learned yesterday when Petra interviewed our senator was that you can actually request a report. You can ask the author to request the committee, why haven't you heard this bill? What's the reason why this bill was not heard? I
mm,
mean, it's a child abuse bill. You would think that it would be heard, but why is that? And they are supposed to give a response. And maybe it's the way it was written, they didn't agree with it, but they need to give some type of feedback, because again, if we bring this bill back in 2 years, we want to be able to work out all those kinks and make sure that it's better written, or whatever issue it was that they found. So that was something that our senator mentioned. So that's what I did yesterday. I emailed the author and I said, hey, can you request this report? We want to know why it wasn't heard.
mm.
And maybe if you get that question going, or that request, who knows, maybe they'll bring it up before time runs out, because a lot of these bills, if they're, excuse me, uncontested, they can go through really quick.
Mhm.
But again, we're running out of time, and they have to go through so many steps. So it just depends. It just depends on the bill. But this was one of the biggest ones that I was pushing for, because it would recognize that language.
Mhm. Yeah, there's all these, like you said, with the language, and a lot of parents don't understand the language, and sometimes when they go to read the bill, sometimes they don't understand it because how the law, how they word things,
Right.
it's kind of twisted.
Yes, and it's very, and some of it can be very confusing, because you got to confusing. You have to read all the whole law, and they might just add something. They might, add in a couple of words. They might take out a whole sentence. It depends on what they do, but it's good to when your legislative session starts, is you can always search in their search engine, search child abuse, search
Mhm,
custody, see what's going to be working, what they're working on. So then that way you can find the bill, like, what, this is really interesting. I want to support this bill. And that's how I found the child abuse bill. I was just searching child abuse, and it came up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, who did this? And then you find the author, and the author, they're not as responsive when you're inquiring, and you have to kind of keep trying. And some legislators are very um, how would you say, they are more engaged with their constituents than others. It's harder to get in touch with some, and so it just depends, and you find that out during this process.
mm,
um, what they're pushing, and what's really important to them, and are they just filing these bills and then forgetting about them. So you kind
mm.
of have to stay on them about this.
Yeah, as we were talking earlier, you have to be in their face a
Yeah,
lot. So
yeah,
you encourage parents to make phone calls every day?
I would say, I would say change it up. Send an email maybe 3 times a week, and maybe call twice a week. um, Maybe if you're in the capital area, stop by. go knock on their door, ask for their support, ask for the status of the bill. And one of the learning, the process that we've come across is the status. Like we weren't familiar that a lot of these bills, as constituents, even though they authored it, we need to request that it be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Not It's not an automatic thing. Just because they authored a bill, they're gonna send it up to a committee. There's just so many bills that are going through
Mm-hmm.
that we need to request a hearing for this bill, but we need to reach out to the author of the bill and say, hey, has this bill been already requested to go before such and such committee? And they no, it hasn't. I'm like, well, when can we expect that? And then we ask parents, ask the same question. When is this bill going to be heard? And then when it gets to the committee, well, when are you going to bring it for a hearing? It's there in your committee, it's just sitting there, but when are we going to expect a hearing? Because we want to testify. We want to drive up there and show our support. So then it's getting on them in your face kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just learning that process. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing with requesting this report. Like if you're not going to hear the bill, then tell me why. What's the reason? It's a child abuse bill. So we've just learned these things along the line by getting involved and just staying really active on this and asking questions of what can we do as constituents, and getting more parents to do the same thing, because the more they hear from us, they can't ignore the issue, and then it's going to
Mm-hmm.
look bad that these bills aren't being heard.
Mm-hmm. So how many parents have you, talked with and are making these phone calls and are helping with all of this?
Our Facebook group, 2503, has about, I think, over 3,000 parents. I started one in California after their penal code, which is 278.5. The penal code in California, it's called deprivation with child custody. And so the language is a little different, but it's the same thing. It's retaining the child against a valid court order. So that one has, I would say maybe 40 or 50. I'm trying to get that one, to grow a little bit by people
Mm-hmm.
joining and getting a little bit involved, and actually just mimicking what we're doing in Texas. That's
Mm-hmm.
all it takes. So just mimic it, implement it, and get these bills passed, getting involved. And again, when you first start this process out, this journey of litigation, you never know how these laws get passed. You never know that your voice really matters. It's kind of like power in numbers, that if you do this together and you set all the other differences aside, it's like a movement. You can actually get bills passed, and that's what we're doing here. So it's just getting everyone familiar with it. It's not as hard as it looks if we're stronger in numbers and we use our legislators, because that's what they're there for. So like I said, in Texas, it's about 3,200. In
Mm-hmm.
California, it might be 30 or 40. I wanted to try one of these in every state, because every state has a penal code. So I started a group in Florida, but I didn't really kind of get it off the ground, because I used to live in Florida. I was trying to help the Florida community out and get them familiar with this law, and then what it takes to get it enforced.
Mm-hmm.
But when you meet other parents, you might see them on social media and you see their struggles and what they're doing. When we went to the Capitol, I got to actually see them in person, and it was just amazing,
Mm-hmm.
because they went up there and testified, and you remember their name and you remember their experience. And it was an honor to meet so many parents just fighting for the same thing, with just equal shared parenting, but supporting all these causes together. Um, and photos and at the Capitol, and um, just there together supporting the cause. Equal shared parenting should be a new platform for kids to have access to both. And it was amazing. It really was. I was just so happy to be there.
Well, that's good. Did anyone bring up to these legislators, have they seen Erasing Family?
I don't think so. Because a lot of it was just giving testimony on supporting the bill.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that some of the committee that we have, they do have some family attorneys that do not agree with equal shared parenting, and they expressed why. You find out that some of these committee members pay into the Family Law Foundation, which actually supports the lobbyist.
Mhm.
So you see that they're in a position, well, of course they don't want these bills passed because it will impact the family court system, who they are, what they do for a living.
Mhm.
And there were committee members that said, what's wrong with this? It sounds amazing. Why shouldn't parents have equal access? So you come across those members. But at the same time, we get a lot of news stories put together, parents that are willing to um, share their situation to support the bill by going to the media. We get the media involved,
Mhm.
seeing those stories. I don't recall if anyone brought up erasing family,
Mhm.
but they know it's an issue, because otherwise we wouldn't be there pushing this bill so hard. And it just needs to there needs to be more change.
Mhm.
Um, and that documentary, it does clear. It's just very that's what's going on. That's what's been going
Mhm.
on for years. And it just captures a different perspective of parents, the children, the emotions involved, the incentivizing the children, all that is it's just captured in one really good documentary. Uh,
Mhm.
but I've recommended it to as many parents as I can, because they're going to know someone that went through this.
Mhm.
Um, and when we meet some of these legislators and our sheriffs and our DAs, they normally share, like, yeah, my brother-in-law went through, or my brother went through this, or a friend went through this. There's so many of us.
Mhm. And if these people are so worried about losing their jobs, being attorneys, they could go into mediation and help mediate and
That's true.
solve this. I mean, it's not the end of the world if if that bill gets passed and now it's shared parenting. So go into mediation, go into corporate law, find something else to do.
Right. Exactly. Because it shouldn't be this hard.
Mhm.
These cases are drawn out for years, and they
Mhm.
support the high conflict. And if we have an equal shared parenting bill, it minimizes that. It minimizes what the child's having to go through.
Mhm.
And you have these parents that are now at the same starting point. So hopefully all these bills will work out. Otherwise, I will help with equal shared parenting in 2 years. I will help show up at the Capitol. Um, I was raised by my dad. I think dads can do an amazing job.
Mhm.
So I just support a lot of this process to legislate for change.
Mhm. Well, that's excellent. Is there anything you would like to add or any words of encouragement to parents to uh, keep up the fight?
Just to get involved. I know we hear a lot of really sad stories, and parents feel like the system didn't do them well, the system failed them. Well, we need to change the system, regardless of your outcome. My outcome was not in my favor, but I used my pain, I used my mental fortitude to advocate, to make a difference.
Mhm.
Um, and whether it's the equal shared parenting bill, or interference with child custody, or the child abuse bill, they all have to do with the child. The child is the issue here, and what they're having to go through. So we need to keep the focus on that. It's not a mom's issue. It's not a dad's issue. It's a parent's rights to
Mhm.
have the child, receive love from both parents, and not putting the child in the middle of this conflict. And so when I speak on supporting a lot of this, it's because it's just the advocating that I want to give to, based on my situation. And some parents might be ready for that, some may not. But even making the call to support the bill is advocating for change. If you could do that, that would be great. But a starting point is to know who your legislators are, know when your legislative session begins and ends,
Mhm.
and find out what bills are going to be brought up, so that so
That's
that
okay.
so that you can know what's out there. You can always go to, like, do a search, a Google search on who represents me, and then the state initials, or Texas, and then you might enter your address, and it'll bring up all your house reps, and
Mhm.
and know who they are. And when they're on social media, you can like them, and you can follow events. They might have a town hall meeting. They might
Mhm.
have a volunteer for Christmas donation, giving donations, collections, things like that. Go and meet them,
Mhm.
and get to know them, and then share your story. Can I have a moment of your time? I'm going through this. This is what the law is, but it's not being enforced. Things like that,
Mhm.
and then you'd be surprised that there's other parents going through the same thing, and you just band together and you work together. I've met so many parents doing this, that we support each other. Some of us have moments where we're struggling because of a lot of this alienation, that we just support each other. I also created a support group here in San Antonio, and we meet once a month, whether it's on Zoom or at a park, for alienated parents. I had another mom who used to host the group, but she moved to California. So when I got here, I wanted to take over. So I
Mhm.
just reach out to parents. Hey, I'm going to meet at the park. I'm going to take some coffee. Y'all want to join me? Great. We'll talk for 2 hours. But just something to do. We don't just commensurate about our sad stories. Like, what can we do to kind of help us cope? Um,
Mhm.
and it's just talking about a lot of the things that we could contribute to with the advocacy. Is there like a documentary that I could see, and then you could recommend these things. Watch this, read this book. This is what helped me. Just stuff like that. So it's just
Mhm.
getting involved. It really is.
Well, this is wonderful you're doing this. We need to clone you or multiply you.
That's what Petra said. Petra said there needs to be a Claudia in every state.
See there, great minds think alike. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, there needs to be a lot more people getting involved. And I'm
yeah.
so glad you're out there and you've been a Marine and thank you for serving our country.
Thank
And
you.
I'd like to have
That's the mental fortitude. It's adapting,
mhm,
overcoming, and just keep
mhm.
going. And I know it's hard, but I just want to see it change. I really do. So I appreciate doing this.
Great. I'd like to have you back on as well, maybe in the fall or during the summer with these bills, and you can tell us how they're doing.
Okay, absolutely. Yes. And again, we have other advocates. So if you're interested in hearing from a different perspective, what got them started, their story, um, just let me know. They're interested as well. Um, we just want to advocate for change, and we've learned so much that we're just not going to stop. We're going to do something else. We're going to do another bill.
Right, and just keep going.
Yes.
And perseverance does pay off.
Yes. Absolutely.
Well, Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Claudia and other guests in the future. So thank you again, Claudia.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate your work.
Thank you.